It's now my pleasure to introduce the leader of the Bloc Québécois, Mr. Yves-François Blanchet, and the Bloc Québécois agriculture critic Yves Perron. There will be a Q&A at the end of their address. Gentlemen, the floor is yours.
Bien, bonjour tout le monde.
Well, hello everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you. I know that there are many participants whom I've met before, including, of course, Marcel. And I want to say hello to Marcel and to my colleague as well, Yves. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. I think that there will be nothing new to the fact that the Bloc, once again, is expressing its profound commitment to agriculture on many fronts. Of course, there is the issue of having access to food, but there's also an issue of identity, which is essential for us in agriculture. Agriculture has a meaning in who we are, the way that we recognize ourselves in our own regions. Now, I wouldn't go so far as to say that I can deal with all of the issues that you're interested in, and I couldn't go as far as saying that I can do it in as much detail as I should, because we have a very little time. So I know what a big issue agriculture is. I know how important it is because I'm keenly interested, and I'm lucky enough to have the support of Yves in all of these files. But I do want to raise a few files myself. Firstly, our democracy is such that every 4 years, and sometimes a little bit more often than that, the population has to choose those who will represent them. And some ridings will select people who will form the government, but some ridings will select people who will not form the government. And in all cases, an elected representative is the choice of their riding and has a mandate, whether that mandate is to be in the opposition or to form government. That is still an important mandate. And of course, the Bloc Québécois does not pretend that we want to form government, because what we see is that we will not always be in a situation where we have to get rid of one for the other, and so on and so forth. We want to defend the interests of Quebec. That is what we are there. We are promoting an identity which we feel is the best for Quebec, which brings us in a federation such as yours in a situation that could be somewhat strange. The Bloc Québécois speaks on behalf of Quebec. So, of course, we are speaking on behalf of the farmers and the agri-food industry in Quebec. However, what we have discovered on a daily basis in our activities and in our meetings and in what we hear from various constituents is that, of course, collaboration is essential. Collaboration that the MPs from the Bloc share with the Canadian agricultural sector. And the Canadian agricultural sector has some interests that are very much aligned, of course, with the Quebec sector. And that's where our role is important. It's important to have about 30 MPs, and we'll see how many will be in the next elections. And these MPs very systematically defend agriculture as defined in our discussions with your spokespeople. And this is why we have such frequent meetings. That's why we have a sustained dialogue. That's why we work in collaboration. And I think we never speak up in the House without having firstly consulted the people from this sector. And that makes the role of the opposition so much more important. Rather than having an agricultural sector that doesn't ever get a say in the parliament where laws are enacted, you will always have someone you can count on, and the other parties do it as well. I recognize that, but there will always be a party that will be there to raise the issues, to ask the questions that are essential to you. We have done so, and we will continue to do so, and I think that's an important role. Now, regions, I have said, are an important element of Quebec's identity. When we talk about regions, we can't forget, we can't set aside the issue of the economic importance of agriculture in regions in Quebec. Often when we talk about regions in Quebec, we're talking first and foremost about the regions surrounding the big cities. But Actually, there are regions that are really close to Montreal that are agricultural regions that are extremely important, that serve to feed Quebec as a whole. All of Quebec's regions, there are very, very few exceptions. In all of our regions, along the years, we've developed an agricultural model which is typically from Quebec. It doesn't mean that we don't have nothing in common with other provinces. There's a lot that is similar practically in the rest of Canada and in Quebec, but there are important differences when we compare ourselves to the US, for instance. So we need to raise some issues. First of all, we need to preserve our agricultural land. We've seen since the beginning of the 1980s a drop in the number of dairy farms, for instance, and the fact that there are fewer farms means that there's more concentration in the industry, and that a great deal of what was a part of the very identity of the Quebec model is now disappearing. And we haven't stopped progress from moving forward, but we need to adjust to these changes. But what we must avoid is having these changes be forced by decisions made elsewhere at another level of government or at another decisional level, so that the agriculture has to adapt purely economically or purely because of trade, because of health and safety rules, because of antibiotic rules and so on and so forth. Then suddenly agriculture is forced to adapt, and that may threaten our ability to protect this model, the agricultural model that we could really take to heart. The Bloc Québécois feels that it is essential to ensure that when a family wants to ensure intergenerational transfers, that can occur. And the problem is raised again and again. I remember when I was an MP and a minister at the Quebec Legislative Assembly, it was already an issue that was raised, and it has never been adequately resolved. The fact that the ability to borrow when you have an intergenerational transfer is so hindered. We need to find solutions, and having wonderful words and wonderful promises is really not very helpful at this point in time. And then there's another second issue that we need to deal with, and that is the issue of supply management. Supply management has allowed, independently of who was born or not when it was initially created, the fact is that supply management has enabled us to ensure that we have a supply quality and the economic returns for our own agricultural production. And we talk a lot about milk, but this is also about poultry, eggs. This model of supply management should have been protected. But of course, as soon as we have trade discussions, there's this willingness that this be re-examined. And then between 2, 3, 4 points where you start reducing percentages of income, certainty of income for these farm families, this is all called into question with these trade agreements. When we're talking about growth, it's not the base that is a profit, it's the upper level, those that you sacrifice when you have these trade agreements. That's what ensured full profitability on farms. So you ended up with farm families, farms that were less profitable, and there's been more distress, financial distress, and psychological distress on farm. That has to be raised. The government has started in the first, has undertook to deal with the issue of compensation for this trade agreements. They started to pay up these compensations, and that is a file that's moving forward. But compensation, when it comes to the U.S. and Mexico trade agreement, that has not moved forward yet. And we have given up to a foreign market, part of our market, and that is going to have an impact for a long time, and a long time to a degree that is hard to anticipate. It's hard to, even judging by their own numbers, it's hard to know exactly how widespread this impact is going to be, and that creates uncertainty. So we need to ensure the sustainability of this compensation, and we need to add the CUSMA to this compensation, because it is very unlikely that Great Britain will accept, for instance, that what had been negotiated with Europe will stay in Europe, and that they will not get any of that benefit of these agreements with Canada. And we want to avoid being once again in this situation where we come up with all sorts of excuses, and once again we tell farmers, well, you're going to have to make a sacrifice because that cheese is going to have to come in. So I come to a thought that and a discussion that I've already had with some of you. When it comes to negotiations of trade agreements, well, there are not very many that are really huge, but when they negotiate these trade agreements, they say everything's on the table, and then we'll take things off the table, this, that, and the others. And then you come to that discussion for culture, for instance, and we say, well, you don't have to negotiate culture when you're negotiating a trade agreement. Well, shouldn't we consider a new version of that very notion? It shouldn't be automatic that your agriculture will automatically be part of these trade agreements, so that you can have to decide that certain of your sectors of activities, and if they want to benefit from broader trade, there are some sectors that benefit from trade, of course, but wouldn't it be justified in this context that we have a reverse obligation, that instead of taking some parts of agriculture out of the negotiations, that it be the other way around? You can choose to add these issues to these trade agreements, and then at that point, that I think that's the right way to go ahead with these trade agreements. And we have to be open to that, because we have to avoid having some agricultural sectors feel penalized because others don't want to be involved in these trade agreements, or the opposite. So generally speaking, the sector often ends up with a fait accompli, and we can only hope to limit the damage, and that is really not the solution that we're looking for. And that's why we came up with Bill 216 to protect supply management in future trade negotiations. It's essential, and I often say that the Bloc is not so much an opposition party as a party willing to come up with proposals. And that is why we feel that the government has to ensure through a legislative decision that we fully protect supply management for the future. There are people who are going to say that, yes, they support supply management, but they're not going to be favorable to that. Well, then we need to ask the question, why would a government not support something which really should allow it to fully realize what is its own undertaking, really? These are things that we need to think through here. So I really feel that we need to consider excluding supply management from trade negotiations, as in our Bill 216. Now, there are other challenges, and I won't go into details, but we've already talked about some of these issues. Temporary foreign workers, the program that has been going better. I remember having to speak up last summer because things were going awry, and I'm sure this year again there will be issues that in this program we need to act when that happens. And for some farmers it was easy to manage the measures, for others it was much more complex. And in welcoming in these temporary foreign workers and the quarantine that's necessary and further supervision and so on, we need to act on that. But I think that in the next few months there's a risk that we will see just how serious an issue this can be. And the fact that it's a second year does not necessarily mean that things will go that much more smoothly, because we know that border management is still an issue that for logistical or ideological reasons, the government has a lot of trouble managing this issue. So I invite you to keep a close eye on these issues and to keep in close contact so that we can work together as we did with Yves' efforts since since the elections in 2018. You know that it's easy to reach us. You know how available we are to help out, and we're always feel that we have that responsibility of expressing your opinions within the House. So if in the next few months we see challenges, and I don't know if we'll have to face elections soon, I'm starting to think that it will not be this spring because logically nobody wants to deal with that. Those who want to deal with elections are actually those who say they don't want elections are those who want it the most, but the opposite is also true. So I think that there will not be elections in the spring, which means that we will have an opportunity to put forward some bills over 9 months starting in mid-April, because between now and mid-April, there are only 2 weeks of sessions left. And that will allow us to be a better spokesperson, the spokesperson that you need when the season of harvesting starts and with all of the issues with temporary foreign workers that may be raised. And we will probably have to rely on the support of vaccines, foreign vaccines, because we didn't develop our own. That will mean that this season, we need to work to ensure that this season not be as hard as all that. So I don't know how long I've spoken, but if there are any questions, I'm willing to answer them now. Hello, I don't know how this works for questions. I'm not sure.
Yes.
So the first question is from Andy Kivenhoven. Thank you for being with us at the CFA. The ornamental farms produce products that are good for the soul. The gardens reduce stress and give a place for people to go decompress. So are you going to support 2022 as a year of gardens? Well, first and foremost, the probability of our forming the government is very, very low, but that doesn't keep us from already supporting this notion. And I can tell you, while we're just among ourselves, I'm not really very talented when it comes to ornamental gardens myself. I just appreciate them. So we already support this notion. And now at this time we don't have any other questions.
You can ask your questions in English and we will translate them on the back end. You can wait just a minute to come through from the floor.
I'll take this opportunity to say hi to Madame Robinson, all of your elected representatives. Mr. Grolot, thank you for having us with you.
We do have a bit of a delay in the chat function sometimes, so we'll just wait for another couple of minutes to see if we have any more questions coming from the floor. And the meeting has been predominantly in English, so people probably just needed a reminder that they can certainly type their question in English. It will be translated on the backside, and Matt will then read it out in French. So we'll just wait another moment.
I might even make the attempt to answering in English, which is not my strong suit, but I could do the effort. Please don't tell anybody.
C'est plus bon que mon français.
Your English is much better than my French.
Est-ce que c'est un problème si je lis les questions en anglais?
Is it an issue if I read the question in English and you could answer in French? Please go ahead.
To be a party of opposition, how does the Bloc Party propose to deal with beneficial trade and national agriculture interests across all provinces in Canada?
We live in a democracy. Opposition parties have a role. They vote. the 32 votes of the Bloc Québécois in this parliament has proven quite important for the government a few times, when what they propose is suitable for Quebec interests. And many times it's been suitable as well for Canadian interests, according to the way we see it. We vote in favor. Since this is a minority government, an opposition party might prove to be a very important group in a democracy. Some people tend to see it as being like we are in government or we are nothing. And this is not the way it works. So whatever proposal which is being put forward by whomever wants to do it, if it seems good to our, what we believe our good judgment, we will support it. And it's happened many times in less than 1.5 years that the proposals of the Bloc Québécois have been supported and implemented by the government. So we will keep doing just that. And I please myself when I say that we are an opposition party, but we are mainly a propositions party.
Merci. La prochaine question est de Marcel Gros.
Thank you. The next question is from Marcel Gros. Which parties do not support 216? I'll let Yves answer that question because he's been following that more closely than I have. Dear colleague, thank you for the question, Mr. Groslo. You know we're trying to convince everyone, and I'll send the message out that it's still time to support this idea, which ideas that are good for agriculture. Yves-François has just said that when it's good for agriculture, we support it. There's a project that talks for exemptions in the Canadian carbon tax that doesn't apply to Quebec, and we voted for that. The Conservative Party seems to be the one that's the most difficult to convince. We have no formal response from the government, but the message that I would send out and that I would ask you to transmit to your elected officials, the next vote is to move from the second reading to go into a committee on this bill. The committee will be studying this, bringing in witnesses and all the different parties to see what's good in that bill, what should be changed so that it can be acceptable for everyone. So I would encourage all the parties that would like to defend supply management. That means every elective official in the Commons to study this project and this bill in the committee. I have something to add. The reason that there's hesitation on the part of the Conservative and Liberals, the ones that could form government, it's the temptation to the temptation. We want to protect supply management. When we're in government and we'll begin trade negotiations with foreign countries, we don't know if there'll be significant pressure, that we don't know if we'll be able to make gains in other sectors. When we think that we can really form a government, we're not really willing to move forward. And that's a concern. We could say, yes, people are making a commitment not to go along, but when it's time to vote, they're not quite as sure. In Quebec, there's an expression, your actions have to follow your words. And we want to vote for a law that's going to support supply management. And if you can't do that, well, then it doesn't mean anything at all. Thank you. The next question is from Martin Caron. How do you see in ecological goods and services law in Canada? It seems that's a very broad subject. The whole philosophy in which we're working on the environment. I think that it's really ecological. That's based on science. That there wouldn't be any incompatibility. There's no incompatibility between environmental and business interest. When we talk about environmental issues, we seem to be some kind of preacher who doesn't allow the government to do its business. It's obvious that it's more to preach for environmental measures than not to. Does that mean that we're going to leave the companies, corporations along with their problems? The companies are responsible for the restrictions in the environmental patents, but governments must encourage measures that are very often tax measures, but they can also be direct measures for subsidies. So the companies that want to can proceed to the environmental changes through agricultural practices and the pressures. They can't really be told just to give up profitability. There are soil techniques and there are community level works and the creation of certain niches, which will be so that we can encourage and support gradual conversations and not force people to break away from the practices they're using now. Thank you. The next question is in English.
Alberta saying that there needs to be another FTP meeting to make a decision on the topic. Is your opinion the same, or can a province indicate their position without a formal gathering?
I'm afraid I cannot answer precisely to that question. Maybe Yves could more than I could. We support the program. We believe that the sector has the need for some, I don't know if it can be translated, previsibility, the capacity to foresee what's coming for them. And this specific goal to achieve. And we have always supported that and we will keep supporting that. But I don't know about the Alberta issue precisely.
I can give it a try. If I understood well the question, you're telling that the Alberta said that they need another meeting before saying yes to the reform of agri-stability. One thing is for sure is that agri-stability changes are more than needed. They are essentials, and it's the unanimity all around the people of the agricultural world that came to our committee to do a testimony. Everybody was asking for 85% and the removal of the marge de référence in French. I don't know the word in English. Sorry.
The reference margin.
We work very hard to have the 85% and the marge de référence removal written in the report of the committee. So I think it should be done. I'm conscious that all the provinces need to give their willing, but ultimately we support the position that probably the federal could go ahead with its 60%, like the UPA is asking in Quebec, and I think everybody is asking. But the better scenario is everybody in, and it's something that it's needed for the people. So I think it's been a long time since it has been cut out, and we need to change very fast. So I am asking everybody to go forward with this.
Merci, et ça c'est toutes les questions de la...
Thank you. Those are all the questions from the public.
Merci
Donc,
beaucoup.
on se fait des salutations. Vas-y.
Oui, alors oui, je te laisserai le mot de la fin, chef. Alors, je vous remercie beaucoup.
I'll let you conclude. I'd like to thank you very much for inviting us. I'd like to speak quickly on the environmental issue. We would always like to present a vision according to which the role of agriculture. And I'm saying that from the bottom of my heart. Farmers are people who are standing on the earth. They're the ones who really should be protecting it. And I think the government should recognize that and give you much more latitude in risk management programs. So we have to quickly make the changes in agri-stability so that you can make decisions when you need to do it, instead of spending weeks to fill out a form and then realizing that you didn't tick off the right block. It's important we're bringing that vision of the protection of the environment, but it has to be part of the changes. We need alternatives. I'm thinking of grain dryers. There's no quick alternative now. As Yves-François says, we have to support transition when it is not, and we have to support it quickly. That takes research and development. Our universities have not been supported for a long time, and I'm sorry for taking so much time from the leader. I don't think that there's any more time. I'd just like a few more seconds and say over the next coming weeks, we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know if there's an election coming or not. But I'd like to ensure you that this will be part of the platform of the Bloc Québécois. We think that we are, please, you can make contact with us. Thank you very much for inviting us, and I would look forward to meeting you in person very soon. Thank you.
The Canadian agriculture industry has been very unified in their call for improvements to BRM, as you've said, Yves, and we certainly are hopeful that we will see that happen. We continue to hear the words unbankable, untimely, unpredictable, and we certainly hope to see those improvements come along so that we can move forward with more confidence, make greater investments, and really unleash agriculture's potential. So with that, thank you very much for joining us, and we appreciate your time. Have a great day.
Thank you very much.
Au revoir.
Thank you. Merci.